Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's right. Because I think it's just four today.
A lot of material, so
Yeah,
I need a little more
it's
space to set
no,
up.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I have to bring the rolly cart now. I can't carry that box. Evan, good
Nice
to
to meet you.
meet you. You
We've
too.
talked on the phone.
Yes. Hi, Nikki.
How are you, Nancy? You're not
My
busy, are
ears
you?
are still recovering from Friday.
Oh, that crew. When Matt says they're here to answer questions about the project, that's what I'm told you should be saying.
Meetings on Halloween. I figured I have a minute. I know in some ways, so I'm not really good at that. But yeah, oh my gosh, that was crazy.
And then I talked to the guy that was talking about all the projects, Jason. Jason. Until we get these are all good projects, but we couldn't obligate what we had last year. Nickel and dime these guys over this and that. They qualify. You should let us know if you have questions before that and answer.
No, when I looked at the agenda, I saw, requests. It didn't matter. So that was, I should have known that. But anyway, yeah, it took me the weekend to do the best.
We got through it.
Yeah.
I'll give you back the folder and I'll just take that part.
Hi, Dale. You're doing great.
I tell you, I better start getting back into it.
That's the end of my
Janice?
Yep.
Hi, Tim. Good, thank you. How about yourself? That's good.
Can we have beer sponsors?
So Nancy, you still just have three right now. We're waiting for Sean to arrive. Carrie's on the phone. She's actually either just being released or in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So
And Sean is driving in?
they thought so.
Okay.
We'll just wait.
Oh my gosh. Poor Terry.
Yeah.
I hope that's awesome.
I can't wait. That's going to be
Oh.
Alicia's on. All right, good. Having a good time. Yeah, absolutely.
It's all right.
Absolutely.
You have business.
There's, oh my gosh.
Lisa Terry is on the phone.
Yes.
Okay.
While we do roll call, we'll make sure.
How have you been?
Pretty good. How about yourself? Did you have a good summer?
Oh yeah, there was a summer. Didn't it just kind of blow this year? Sure.
Yeah, it sure did.
I'd like to call to order the September meeting of the Arizona State Parks Board. And with that, I'd ask our Vice Chair, John Sefton, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's have the board members roll call, please.
Dale Larson,
Here.
John Sefton,
Here.
Lisa Atkins, Debbie Johnson, Orm Lewis Jr., Sean Orm, Terry Palmberg,
Terry.
Mute.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Lisa and Terry, for joining us on the phone. We do have a quorum. I just would like to reiterate our mission for this Arizona State Parks Board as it's posted on the agenda. As board members, we are gathered today to be the stewards and voice of the Arizona State Parks and its mission statement, which manages and conserves Arizona's natural, cultural, and recreation resources for the benefit of the people both in our parks and through our partners. So with the agenda items, and because we have just a quorum, we may move some items around just to make sure that we get the action items taken care of early. First of all is the approval of the minutes from June 28th, 2019. Are there any comments or is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move to approve the minutes.
Member Sefton has moved. Is there a second? Was that Lisa? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Hearing no other conversation, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So now let's go into the, let the record show that board member Sean Orm has arrived. Now we have 5 members on it. No, that's quite all right. We have 2 on the phone. Fiscal year 2020 budget. Kevin, you want to give us the presentation about the outlook for this coming calendar year?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I have just a brief overview of the fiscal year 20 State Parks budget. First, looking at our fiscal year 19 results, our state park continued to experience growth. Our revenue was at $21.3 million, which was an increase of about 3.9% versus the prior year. Our total park visitors were also increased. We had 3,219,492, an increase of over 29,000 from the prior year.
Continue, Kevin. Go ahead.
So the parks plan for our fiscal year 20 revenue for the, reflects a 1.5% increase. Other fund revenues are based on our current forecast trending information. The fiscal year 20 budget includes several legislative directives outside of our normal operating recurring expenditures, including the following.
Just hang on a second.
Sure.
Member Terry Palmer, could you mute your phone then? I know you're in a difficult situation where you are, but we're hearing your conversation. Terry? I'm sorry. Excuse privacy. Do you want to, can someone try to reach you by phone? Oh, can you? Thank you. All right. Go ahead, Kevin. I apologize
All right.
for that.
So several items that are outside of our normal recurring operating expenses included the following. One is the Buckskin Fire District fireboat appropriation for $225,000. That has been both paid and completed, that transaction. The Arizona Trail Fund appropriation for $250,000 was included in the SPUR fund. The OHV Great Western Trail appropriation of $692,100 was included in the OHV fund. And the capital project for the Tonto Bridge repair of $1,250,000. All of the other details for the budgets for each of the funds was included in the pre-meeting summary exhibit provided to the board. The recommendation, the ASPT staff recommends the approval of the proposed fiscal year 2020 operating, donations, and capital budgets, and that the executive director be authorized to implement the programs that have been submitted to the governor's office and legislature as required. Any questions or discussion items?
Thank you, Kevin. Questions from the board? Bob, anything from your end? First of all, we appreciate the fact that we're getting it sooner now than we have in the past, which is a very helpful hint. And I know that this is one of your goals is to try to be as transparent and early in the process as possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to put an exclamation on that is this was a unique year. The deliverable dates and timelines for budgets of all state agencies was moved way up this year. And I think there's some stuff that the state's wrestling with and they're going to have to work through the legislature, so our timeline got moved way up. I think we talk somewhere in October-ish is usually when the budget is submitted. But I know this is kind of after the fact. We're going to set a new process for next year that we will do this way ahead of time, give the board enough time to look at the budget and weigh in on the budget. But I think in this case, what we will do, depending on how the board wants to vote, we're still in budget negotiations right now, but nevertheless, I think we will keep you updated on where that budget is, what you approve, and how the process is going all the way until the gavel hits and the budget is approved, hopefully by the legislature and signed by the governor this year, so that way you're involved in the process. So we intended to really look from soup to nuts, A to B, or A to Z on how we're going to get this in front of you, how we keep it transparent, have regular updates at board meetings, however you like. But I think this year was just an anomaly. But it's, I think, in a standard year, a normal year, I guess, if there is such a thing in the budgets, that we can keep you all abreast of exactly what's going on and involved along the way.
Thank you. Well, yes, Member Palmer? Or is it Lisa? I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Atkins, that's the one.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, along that line, from a matter of the standpoint of timing, and I wanted just to address Member Orm and I spent some time 2 years ago now on what our board true authorities are. And I think when it comes down to specific verbiage, how we take action and would perhaps, we're not approving a budget in essence today, right? We're perhaps endorsing the concept as presented by the director, and that at this point we don't approve, to me we don't have the authority to approve this budget as a board unless we have really clarified that within the legislation, and we've got some more work to do in that area. So,
Mr. Chairman, Member Sefton, you're right, and I think what we can do next year is at least talk about priorities, objectives, what is the board, kind of where you're coming from, and then have our budget submittal hopefully reflect that. As Lisa said, as it's now submitted, then it's kind of out of our hands, but I think we can do a better job at talking through those priorities, strategic goals that you may want us to focus on. And to get that input helps us craft the budget to submit downtown, and then the negotiations will start between the executive and the legislature, and then we can keep you apprised. In my view, that's the process that we could go through. And if, in this case, it would be September, we'd start, well, before the fiscal year ends, probably. Right. But I think, is there something you want us to really focus on in this coming fiscal year? And I think our budget should capture that as best as it can before it's submitted.
Any other comments? Hearing none, there is a motion that we would approve a recommended budget. Do you want to
I will take a stab at
adapt the language?
adapting the language. So I will move to endorse the executive director's recommended FY20 operating donations and capital budgets as lump sum, and that the executive director be authorized to implement the program as has been presented to the governor's office and legislature.
A revised motion has been made and a second by Member Orm. Is there any conversation or discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I
Lisa.
think, given my position as an agency director in addition, I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Okay.
I support it, but I don't think it's an appropriate vote for me to make.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that clarity. There's a motion and a second. Do we need to have it repeated, or the board understand the way that John has revised it? I think we're good. So all those in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying, roll call, I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Lisa Atkins,
She's recused.
Sean Orm,
Aye.
Terry Palmer,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda is the Karchner Caverns 20th anniversary celebration with Michelle, and we've seen a lot of publicity on this recently, so.
Yep. Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, I'm Michelle Thompson, Chief of Communications here, and I hope you guys all have seen that we're celebrating a really special anniversary in November. So on November 16th, we will be hosting a 20th anniversary party for Karchner Caverns, and it's more than just the 20 years as a state park. It's more about the 20 years that it has taken to preserve and conserve this park and make sure that the cave is in pretty much the same condition that it was when the discoverers first found it. So November 16th, we're going to have an all-day event at the park for families and everyone to come out. There will be a lot of different groups there. The Herpetological Society, they're trying to get a wildlife group there. We'll have activities for kids. And then at 4:30, you are all invited to come to our special reception. And there we'll be talking about the importance of Kartchner, its role in the economy here in Arizona, and just celebrating that 20 years that we've had. So I know you guys all got your cave the date, and if you'll just RSVP, we'd be really, really happy to see you down there. And just as an aside, on Friday, the Kartchner family is having their family reunion, and there are 450 Kartchners. So this is a really big event. They're not all going to be there. And we're not going to put them all in the cave.
I was going to say, is there a family picture that's going to happen? You know,
I do not know how you could do that. Maybe a drone? All right, well, we hope to see you there at the reception.
Thank you, Michelle. Any board member comments? We appreciate that, and yes, let's be diligent in getting our RSVPs for that date. Sounds like a lot of fun. All right, next item on the agenda is the Bureau of Land Management Plans Update Presenter with Karen. Or Mickey, I guess you're doing it, but
Is Jody, are you on the phone?
I am on the phone. This is Jody Wheel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Jody Wheel, and I'm the Deputy State Director for BLM Arizona Planning and Resources. And I'm here to give you an update today on our travel management planning. And as I'm sure the board is aware, the state of Arizona has granted us some grants in the past, and I kind of want to give you an update on where we are. We were undertaking travel management planning across the state, and we did finish some of that travel management planning. For those who don't remember or aren't aware, travel management planning entails inventorying the routes we have out there, then evaluating those routes for the appropriate type of travel, doing cultural surveys, and then ultimately coming up with a draft travel management plan, and then ultimately finalizing it. We were able to finish some, and what ended up happening is on our Black Canyon, Buckeye Hills, Safford, Keeneland, Lower Colorado, and Lake Havasu, and one in our area strip district. We got partway through, and then we had some change in direction and some change in priority. So I know some of you remember, it's been almost a year and a half ago, we had a fatality on one of our shooting ranges, on Miller Road, and we've undertaken a project where we're looking at actually designating recreational shooting areas to try to control that. And so we've kind of shifted our priorities to that. We're looking into, we're getting ready, we actually just released our draft environmental assessment on that, and we're getting ready to hopefully break ground on some recreational shooting areas around the Phoenix area at the beginning of the calendar here. So happy to talk about that more if folks are interested. But back to travel management planning, just wanted to say that we're going to keep all that data that was collected in terms of the route inventory, route evaluation, as far as on those plans where we had to have that shift in priority. We're going to keep that, and as funds become available and as staff becomes available, we'll pick that up. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and close out those grants. So basically for those, the state had given us grants of about $500,000. We're going to close those out, which there will be a remaining balance of about $154,000 for reprogramming. And then, in addition, we've been, for those travel management plans that I mentioned earlier that we have completed, we are applying for and using state of Arizona grants to do implementation of that, whether that's binding or public education, things of that nature, in order to implement those travel management plans that we were able to complete before this kind of shift.
okay.
I think that kind of covers it. Nikki, was there something else you wanted me to cover, or are there questions from folks?
Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Jody, and thank you for the clarification, because yes, there were concerns expressed by the board when when we looked at this several months ago in terms of that and appreciate the situation that BLM has right now. With that in mind, first of all, Bob, do any of your staff members have concerns? Are you satisfied with the update as far as the travel management plans and where they're going?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have a discussion with the State Director, Ray Suazo, about this. And I mean, this is an administration change. This wasn't BLM didn't deliver. They were told not to deliver a product, essentially. And I know Jody's going to carry the federal line in discussion, talking point on that. But that was my read. And certainly there is no shortage of BLM, Forest Service, and even the state land department's needs about managing OHVs out on the ground, and that we could probably find some great projects to redirect this money until the administration makes a decision to accept and approve those travel plans. And I think, and Jody may correct me, but I think this is going on nationwide for all of. So they're all in a standstill. It's not wasted effort, according to Ray, and Jody spoke on that earlier. It's when they get the go-ahead, they've invested all of that information that we could certainly glean. But in my view, I think we should be supporting the public land agencies and the state land department, that they're managing these. Like I said, there's no shortage of need out there really for managing off-highway vehicles, and if we can keep and enhance our actions to send money their way, that's totally got my support. So.
Okay. Anything further? Yes. Lisa?
This is Lisa. Let me assure you that if we have OHV funds, the state land department would be more than happy to work with State Park. So those funds are good news.
No, we will note that. Thank you.
I know you're shocked with this.
Thank you, Lisa. Mickey, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Mickey Rogers, Chief of Grants and Trails, and I know the board and the other advisory committees had a concern about the outstanding balances with grants that were funded with Forest Service and BLM. Since that time, both BLM and Forest Service have spent down a considerable amount of those funds. So we certainly can see no reason not going with funds in the future with those groups.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Jody. And this is not an action item, so it's really just to bring us up to date. Are there any board member questions? Hearing none, Mickey, as long as you're up there, let's go on to the Land and Water Conservation Fund project update.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, I'm Mickey Rogers. The list on the screen of the projects were approved by the board and National Park Service in 2016. All of these projects are scheduled to be completed by the end of this calendar year. State Parks is required to report on the progress of all our LWCF projects to NPS by the end of September. So we're going to give a board an update of what we're going to send to National Park Service on these projects. The Roper Lake State Park Improvement Project, the initial design has been developed, and we'll be asking for a time extension for that construction. Malady Campground Shade Structure, we have gotten quotes for the shade structures, and again, we'll ask for an extension for the construction of that. Oracle State Park Cesspool Leach Field Project, the cesspool has been removed. The vault toilets were put in the next fiscal year, and we'll ask, and it'll be part of the master plan. The Red Rock Pedestrian Bridge reconstruction, one bridge has been renovated, and plans are in place to replace the two other pedestrian bridges. We will also ask for a time extension on that project. Dead Horse Ranch State Park Cabin and Restroom Project, the initial designs are done for that project, and we'll ask for another time extension on this project. And finally, Fool Hollow Campsite Electrification Project. There's new park staff at the park, and they would rather leave these sites primitive, so we're going to withdraw this project at this time and keep these projects primitive. And one other note, Arizona just received its 2019 LWCF apportionment, and we'll be opening a round of funding at the end of the month, and I'll have a workshop starting next week. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, very good. Thank you. Questions from the board? I think it's only appropriate that Dead Horse Ranch Cabin have a restroom related to it. It only makes sense in that sense of the narration. Sorry for the bad humor. The LWCF, I saw the announcement come out just a week ago, I think, on it with the funding. And this is good news. I mean, the drought in terms of financing, anything with LWCF it's, I think there's some rays of hope now that the federal government is going to continue to invest. And obviously, as a state agency, you're the conduit by which those funds do come out. So it'll be good to keep us up to date on how that works out. What is the total pool of that funds in terms of Arizona's?
Arizona's getting a little over $3.5 million for fiscal year 2019.
All right, very good. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, let's go right into the Recreation Trails Program update.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the board, on April 21st, the Arizona's 2017, the Arizona State Parks, 2018, excuse me, the Arizona State Parks Board approved 35 projects shown on the screen. The current process has, once that a project is approved by the board, they have until July 1st to get the required cultural and NEPA documents to us. However, as in all past years, these documents take much longer to obtain, and many are sent to us well past the July 1st deadline. These documents, once we receive them, are sent to ADOT, to their environmental planning group for review and approval. Once approved, these funds could be obligated. As of May 13th, 2019, there were still 11 projects highlighted in yellow that did not have the required documents to send to review. We were in danger of losing $497,992. State Parks had a meeting with the DOT to discuss the issue and try to find a solution. ADOT agreed to extend the deadline to August 31st and allowed us to move these projects without documents into the 2020 fiscal year approved project list, and we moved several 2020 projects that had all the documents placed to the 2019 cycle to allow us to obligate all the funds. To their credit, ADOT is extremely busy, and these projects take a lot of time to review, and they were able to turn these around in less than 2 months. So we continue to reach out to these sponsors, and to date, the 2019, we still only have one sponsor that have given us these documents, so we continue to try to find the documents for those projects in 2019 to obligate this year. To prevent this issue from happening in the future, State Parks is going to change our process for the upcoming year. Number one, projects must have all documents submitted prior to review, including cultural surveys. The funding cycle will be open on a rolling basis, no more deadlines. Projects that we have all the documents to will be submitted to ADOT as soon as we receive these projects and not batched all at once. We have a development agreement with ADOT to develop standard of work, timelines, and procedures. State Parks will hire a project archaeologist that will be here 2 days a week, review all applications regarding cultural requirements, and work directly with the sponsor, archaeologists, and DOT to get those documents needed for the grant. The current process is Jeff and I look at those documents, and we're not archaeologists, so we're not sure what's needed and what's not. So we're going to have somebody on staff that will do that. The goal is to have at least 50% of the projects pre-approved in the fiscal year 2021 and have all projects by 2022 pre-approved. That's the new process that we're going to implement this year, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Board member comments? Member Orm?
Well, I'm delighted that you have taken the initiative to change the process because clearly something wasn't working. I'm a little curious about what you think that was, but I assume you've addressed that in the changes.
It was, these cultural surveys, they cost a lot of money, and a lot of people didn't want to do the survey until they knew the project was approved. And that's one of the issues. So if we're going to vet that on the staff level before they even apply and say, this sounds like a great project, and certainly go ahead with the cultural reviews. And another thing that we'll be able to do, if we have leftover funding, you gave us the authority to put these on state park projects. Now we'll have projects in the queue. As funding becomes available, we don't get documents, we'll just slip one of those projects in and obligate those funds.
Any other questions from board members? Mickey, this was discussed with ASCOT and the Trails Committee, was it not, last week at their meeting?
Yes, and OFAC.
And often, what were their summary comments, similar to what board member Orm said, or were there any conflicts with what you're recommending in terms of revising the process, or are they okay with
They were both groups are certainly supportive of the project.
Okay, that's
Process,
good.
yes.
All right. You said that you're implementing this new process. Does that require us to approve that, or administratively you're good to go with it yourself?
No, you don't, the board is not the process itself, but you'll certainly approve projects as they come in for funding.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. If there's no action needed, then we'll go on to the next item. Thank you, Mickey. Item number 7, Executive Director Delegation of Authority. And Tim, you're going to help uncomplicate this issue. Is that true?
Chairman, members of the board, that's our hope. So, my name is Tim Franquist. I'm the Deputy Director here at Arizona State Parks and Trails. Is what you can see in front of you is a delegation that we received from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that.
Pretty lofty document, as you can see, and more than the board's more than aware, you can delegate authorities by statute, with the exception of rules. The board cannot delegate rules. What we found over time is what you can see in this document. It starts in 1979. It seems like the delegations were very situational. An issue would come up, the board would delegate to the executive director, which in the early days was probably fine, but as we start to go through the decades, the document's gotten pretty lofty. It becomes very difficult for us to determine whether the executive director has clear authorities. So what we're proposing is a process to kind of revisit the delegation, one, to ensure that the executive director is clear on what's delegated to him, and vice versa, that the board is actually seeing and taking actions, approving things that the parks are doing that you guys want to see as well. Right now, I think the document that we have is getting cumbersome. It's a bit confusing. So we'd like to talk about maybe consolidating that into something a little more streamlined. And again, just representing what the board wants to see, but then again, making it very clear for what the executive director is authorized under delegation.
Board members Palmberg and Atkins, I don't think you have the handout in front of you. I can only describe it as being 60 plus pages of dialogue related to this issue, so it is rather complicated, and I don't mean to make fun of that issue either. But I think and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, and Tim, is there a desire on your part for the board to provide some direction on this with comments as far as looking at it, helping you to try to simplify it? Is that ultimately what this conversation would be about?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think all of the above, really. I think, like Tim said, from the 70s till now, there's a lot of things the board has delegated. That may not be the case anymore, or there may be more. I just wanted this to kind of be the beginning or the start of a process to at least put it on the table and have that discussion. You know, maybe there's some of these are very old. Maybe there's some things you'd like to do new. I think there's a point, and I don't know what that is, of balance between too much authority or not enough authority that business can't get done, but then too much authority, and then the board is kept in the dark and on certain things. And to me, I think that you're right. If we could all study this, and then possibly somewhere down the road, or maybe some sort of retreat format, and we could really have a more in-depth discussion about what does this mean, and what does this mean for board's involvement. And if you delegate an authority, does that mean, you know, I could run amok or whatever, and really start talking about, you know, not just what has been delegated, but how do we communicate that, not just from the staff to the board, but from the board to the public, and that full circle. The other thing, I think, is as new board members come on board, this should be absolutely right in front of an orientation process, that they're coming right in the gate knowing exactly what's the board's authority, what's the executive director's authority, and I think really is just taking a fresh, clean look, and maybe learn from past, but also plan for the future of keeping the board involved, and also having the executive director, myself, or who comes after me, can make the day-to-day decision making and on and on. And I think if you start thinking about it, it's a big topic to really address. But we just wanted to kind of get this on your radar, start talking about it, and then somewhere down the road, we'll definitely schedule a more in-depth discussion about what this means. And certainly have the Attorney General's office there to really, I think, provide clarity on the law and those types of things. So really, I think it's just trying to give you guys a homework assignment, and then maybe we can have that discussion later on.
Board member comments? Member Orm?
Yes, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree that this should be in front of all board members. Definitely part of what I think is currently a non-existent orientation process for the
you're right.
board. That's definitely something that could be done. And there was a very small subset of the board, again, John and I participated in that, along with one or two others, and the Attorney General's office, in an attempt to go through all of these documents and try to understand them. I think it's imperative that we do. I think the public is certainly expecting that the board retain oversight over the agency. That's why we exist. But a clear understanding from your perspective and the board's is essential.
Yes.
So good job getting this in front of us, and hopefully we can carve out time to really dig down and synthesize what all of this means.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Members Palmberg or Atkins, how do you feel?
I agree with what was here.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you. I mean, we have the consensus that, yes, we need to do it, and I guess the recommendation, or at least the suggestion, Bob, you're making is in a soon-to-be scheduled retreat that we dedicate a large amount of time to be really to kind of delve into it. You mentioned homework. I teach. Usually when I give homework out, there's a specific assignment at point what we should be doing. Is there some suggestion, either from you or the AG's office, on how we go about that review and study before we bring this to a open public dialogue at a retreat or some other type of a format?
Chairman, if I may, I think the homework assignment we're referring to is what would the board really want to see? I think right now what has happened is the delegations have been, like I said, very specific. I think now we kind of want to flip that around. And so what is crucial to the board? What is true value add? Certainly budgets, rule development. What are those key topics in terms of oversight that you guys want to see? And I think we can craft a consolidated delegation based on that piece versus what these are very narrowly defined right now in statute. Again, as you can see from the document in front of you, it says subset of this statute, subset of this statute. Where now I think we take an approach of, okay, what does the board truly want to see, and then craft something much more consolidated, but again, it's something that will allow you appropriate oversight, appropriate transparency to the public.
So the thought is individually, we would bring those comments and then provide them to you, because obviously we're going to discuss them as a group. We need to have that as a public posted meeting, which I don't think we're prepared to do that at this point yet. So homework will be individually oriented and then provide you with comments and to be scheduled. Is that kind of the consensus?
Yeah, I think what Tim was saying, Mr. Chairman, is what are those sort of buckets that budget and rulemaking that Tim had kind of thrown out, and there's probably a couple other examples that we can say budget, for example, and then what we can do is say, you know, and there may be some improvement that we can do, but let's look at what those authorities are, and then start from there as sort of the foundation of which to build and be a better process for budget. So in other words, it's overseeing what Kevin presented on earlier, updates through the process. So it's not only just what the authorities are, but how are we going to work together, and what could we do better? And so it's it's keeping in mind authority, but at the same time, it doesn't mean we don't communicate on those topics. And what would you all like to see? So it's more of the operational implementation of that, as well as, okay, maybe there's some new authorities that need to go back or be delegated and kind of start from there. But I think what we could probably do is identify some big areas, and then like budget, rulemaking, anything else. And then I think what we can do is use that as a start point. So we have homework as well, professors, so we can come back and at least get a straw dog in front of you to start. You all have day jobs, I get it, but we can do that for you. And then I think that would be a springboard into whatever discussion whenever we have that down the road. So hopefully sometime this fall. Does that sound okay?
It might be helpful for the board to have a very simple, in lay terms, explanation of what authorities currently exist and belong to whom. And then we can, I think perhaps that might facilitate a further discussion of what is working, what isn't working, how can we flex with that authority.
We can do that.
Excellent suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? All right, given that, thank you very much, Tim, on this. This is certainly not a 30-day process. This is going to take some time, but I think hearing from Board Member Orm and the consensus of the rest of us, and I agree, as new members come onto this board, I think we, at least, I can't speak for John or Terry and myself, but kind of came in on a vacuum. I mean, you know, things were going on, and now we need to solidify that. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I guess we're up to individual thoughts and getting that information, and then same thing, Bob, for you to get your buckets.
You bet.
Identified. All right. Tim, you're still up there. We're going to talk about Board Member Orm Lewis's favorite topic, even though he's not here right now, the Boyce Thompson Arboretum State Park. So in absence, we will carry his spirit.
Great. Chairman, members of the board, while not a lofty document in front of you, what you can see above us here is a quick flow chart of the statute, what more enforcement the statute the board is authorized to do. So kind of taking a few steps back. So we've been having discussions, certainly since I got here in April of 2019, with where do we go with the Boyce Thompson Arboretum agreements. So there was an agreement made in 1976. It was a cooperative agreement and the tripartite agreement. We've worked with the Attorney General's office. What you can see here by statute is a park is over, a piece of property is over 160 acres. Unfortunately, the board doesn't have authorization to designate that as a park. That has to come through a legislative act. Or if that property is over the 160 acres but it's donated, again, the board then has authorization to designate that as a state park. We worked with the Attorney General's office to see if there was some kind of session law or some act of legislature to actually make Boyce Thompson officially a park. Unfortunately, we can't find that information now, so if folks do have that, please bring it forward. We are looking for some kind of legislative underpinning to designating BTA as an official park. The reason why that becomes an issue, in working with BTA throughout June, talking about contractual language after the University of Arizona stepped out of the agreement, it really shed light on this issue of was it a appropriate step to have designated them as a state park back in 1976. Again, we're continuing to do the research. We're hoping we find something, but as of today, we had to take a step back from the contractual language because the property itself is 392 acres. The board wouldn't have authorization to designate it as a park. So even if we were to enter into a bipartite agreement, we still really wouldn't have the legal authority to do that. So as you can see from the flow chart, if BTA wants to donate the property, they certainly can do that, and then it can be designated. The legislature can do that, so that kind of brings us to today. There would have to be some action outside the board to formally designate this as a state park. Jumping forward, should that happen, and we've gone through a process with our other partner parks, if it's a state park, those monies for fees, merchandising, so on, have to be deposited in the state parks fund, the SPURF fund, and so we then have to work through that issue as well, which means BTA would have to accept all state park passes. The monies would then have to be deposited in our SPURF account. We have an agreement with the 5 other partner parks where we simply can pay for property management. So it's not that we have to keep the monies, but the monies does have to be deposited. So we'd have to kind of get through that first piece of how do we legally designate the property as a state park, and then move to how do we do the deposits through SPURF. So in a nutshell, that's kind of why we've been in a pause on this, is because it wouldn't matter right now in the contractual language. We simply can't enter into contractual language on how to support the property going forward.
Wow. Thoughts, comments?
It's astonishing that documentation is missing. I mean, I find that shocking. But Orm Lewis may know where it is.
Orm or Charles is, I
Right,
assume
right.
Charles Etherly is trying to uncover it, and he's been the historian as long as I've known him.
Chairman, and we did certainly reach out to Charles, and what we're finding is it looks like it's this tripartite agreement is the underpinning of the state park. Yeah. We don't think that that statute was a grandfathered statute, so we do think the 160 acres portion of the statute's been there since the beginning, so this wasn't kind of a grandfather issue. Again, we're continuing to research that out, but unfortunately, it looks like that tripartite is the underpinning of that agreement, which again, it can't supersede obviously the statute, and so while I think an excellent effort, and we certainly love BTA, we have this kind of statutory issue that we're up against right now.
So the tri-agreement, essentially for the audience's benefit, U of A, Arizona State Parks, and BTA, correct? That's gone. Because
Correct.
U of A has stepped
U of A
away.
stepped down, correct.
So there isn't any tri-agreement that is legally valid or that would provide any direction. So the question then would be, is there a potential of a buy agreement between Arizona State Parks and BTA? And I don't know if that's a possibility, or are there any negotiations, but right now those are the only two parties left, correct?
Chairman, that is correct, and I think as we began to discuss that, that's when we realized, well, we couldn't even enter into really a bipartite agreement because of the statute, because the property is
Right.
392 acres. We're actually, since the light got shed on it, regardless of it's buy or try, we simply can't enter into any kind of formal agreement to make that a state park until we figure out this either legislative solution or a donation solution.
Please do reach out to Orm and ask him if he has any information. I think my logic is you're probably correct on that, but none of us, at least I wasn't here in 1976 to understand what was happening at that time. Of the title of the entire park, or the title acreage of the Arboretum, how much of it is actually right now under Arizona State Parks acreage?
So we have a building, there's a very small portion of the park, so the at-large park is 392 acres, and I think we have a few acres that the historic home is part of. That would be under the purview of the Parks Board.
So we have just a fraction of the
It's like
overall
10
acreage
acres,
that
10
technically
acres or
would
something.
be
It's very small.
park, state park.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's somewhere around 40 acres or so.
40 acres.
Give or take. 36? 36 acres.
Might be helpful if you could plat out the whole acreage and then show what that part is right now, at least, of what is technically the state park, or that part of it that is under our jurisdiction. I think that'd be helpful.
Yep, Chairman, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Members Palmberg and Atkins, what we're looking at is a pretty profound flow chart up on the screen, which I know they'll get to you so that you can see it as well. But the box that is particularly compelling to me is the final box where it says the Arizona State Parks Board cannot designate property as a state park. And this goes back to that delegation of authority conversation that we just had. So I think we need to know, as this process unfolds, what are the cards that we hold and what are the cards that we don't hold. Because if this is a legislative topic, then that needs to be the direction that it goes into, whether it comes from us or anyone else. So I just want to make sure that we know that we're not playing a myth game here or a phantom game, that we can only do really what's within our authority. Other comments? All right. Hearing none, thank you very much on that, Tim. All right, Arizona Peace Trail Programs update. Matt, I know you're here, and I know Lisa's still on the phone, so let's hear what you and then Lisa have to say.
Let's get this squared away. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Matt Eberhardt, the State Off-Highway Vehicle Coordinator for Arizona State Parks and Trails, here to provide a brief update on the Arizona Peace Trail. So, first and foremost, Arizona State Parks and the Grants and Trails team are extremely committed to working with the State Land Department and all of the other land managers associated with the Arizona Peace Trail to make sure that the trail is safe and well maintained, and that any state land parcels are well managed for any potential future sale for the trust. Back in 2018, the Arizona Peace Trail completed their master plan. I believe, members, you received a copy, and if you have not, I will be sure to send that to you. That was funded by Arizona State Parks. And then back in fiscal year 2019, they submitted a grant application for a two-phase project. The first phase was to identify and survey any segments of state trust land that were along the Peace Trail and have those surveyed and set to establish right-of-ways on the trail. Once that grant was awarded, the State Trust Land Department requested regular meetings with the Peace Trail and with our Grants and Trails team, which we've worked to have those. The last meeting that was held with State Trust Land was August 7th, at which the commissioner requested that the Arizona Peace Trail receive written permission from any of the private landowners. So they are working with their contractor, Logan Simpson, and the counties to establish those written permissions to use the private segments. In the meantime, Mickey and I have been meeting with the different counties and BLM related to those right-of-ways. And we met with the district manager of BLM, who oversees the Colorado River District. He supervises Yuma, Lake Havasu, and the Kingman office. His name is William Mack. And all of their district leaders were in attendance in that meeting as well. They are supportive of the project. They're open to working with us as to what those right-of-ways look like and how they can help with law enforcement and education and those types of things. BLM is also currently completing a NEPA of all of their 436 trails or miles of trail on the Peace Trail. That's outlined in their master plan as well by land manager, how much each owns. And we recently met with Mojave County. They're in support of the project and wanting to further discuss what the ownership of these right-of-ways with state trust land looks like. And we are working to set up meetings with La Paz County and Yuma County as well to discuss the ownership of right-of-ways for the Peace Trail and what that looks like. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the Peace Trail, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, please, Lisa.
This is Lisa. Matt, I appreciate your update, and I appreciate knowing that you're working with all those little entities, but you really need to have somebody from the state land department involved in this conversation, because I don't think that anybody at State Parks is familiar enough with the state land right-of-way process to be able to accurately portray what we're trying to do. I really appreciate the fact that you're getting all this other information, because we're not in a position to approve any right-of-way until we know everything else is in order. But it would be very helpful, because our conversations with local government have not been as affirmative as your report would reflect.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Atkins, at these meetings that we're hosting or meeting and having currently, it's very high-level discussions as to whether or not the counties would be open to the idea of owning those right-of-ways, because I know it's been discussed that a nonprofit cannot hold right-of-ways for state trust land. So these are just very preliminary meetings to establish if there's even an opportunity for the counties to be open to holding those right-of-ways. And then, of course, moving forward.
Matt, you're missing my point. I think that it is very important that you include someone from the state land department and the right-of-way we recently, like every other agency in the state, have been updating out all of our procedures, and right of way is one of them. That's just a data point that I think is very important, because I would hate for the county to give you some indication that they are willing to do that, only to find out that they do not really want that responsibility when they see what the right of way entails.
So, if I understand, and I think the rest of the board members here are nodding heads, is that as you go about meeting with the county representatives, Commissioner Atkins is saying, please have state land as part at the table, having that conversation so that the full area can be in. And I would agree. I mean, there's a reason why that position is by statute on this board for these various reasons. So I think high level or no level or whatever the level is, it just sounds like Lisa wants to make sure her staff or her representation is there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does that satisfy your need, Lisa?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's very helpful.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on the Peace Trail? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do want to say that we did meet with the contractors of the Peace Trail, and we're perfectly willing to apply whatever resources we need to make some conclusions, but we were pretty surprised at how far along this project is without state land really understanding it, including the approval to go through a national state plan on the approving grounds without us knowing that. So the other reason why I want to make sure that the state land is at the table, and we're not going to be in a position to be able to approve anything until I see that all the other pieces are in place, like the BLM and the private property.
So let me ask a question just out of my own ignorance. So when you do these meetings with the various counties, is the contractor also at the table during these conversations?
The meetings that we've had thus far has just been our grants and trails team meeting with the counties.
Is the contractor aware of these concerns then, that they can't just go follow through with it? I mean, who's the oversight for that contractor?
So the contractor is Logan Simpson, and they're working directly with the Arizona Peace Trail. We've been in conversations with them, notifying them that we're meeting with the counties to discuss the right-of-ways. And that's my fault on not including a right-of-way representative from state lands, and we'll make sure that that happens.
Well, no blame or fault here. I'm just making sure that if the contractor is proceeding as quickly as Lisa is describing it, is to make sure that they're not going so fast that they're way ahead of your process of working with the counties and state land.
Yeah, we'll make sure that all the timelines are in check and that everything is appropriate and in a timely fashion with communications with state lands. And I think the overall hope for the project is to have it a nationally recognized and designated trail. And that's years in the making. So we're continuing to communicate with state lands and all the other entities that have the potential to make this project a success, and that'll help Western Arizona and the smaller communities. So we want to do it right. We want to make sure that everybody's happy. And so.
Again, not looking at any fault, but Bob, I think having this as a monthly update on our agenda would be very helpful, so that we can just make sure there aren't any hiccups.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to add on what Matt was saying, and Lisa and I have had conversations, is okay, the trail, the right-of-ways are all approved, the trail is being built. What comes after that is maintenance, enforcement, and education, and that's another big topic, much like the next agenda item is going to be, is okay, now what? And how many resources? And we're right now having discussions about how we can provide those additional resources to entities like the land department that, who's going to hold the right of way. But then that's one piece of this. But when you're talking about law enforcement on a major trail and education and mitigation and all those other things that Lisa and others have been constantly reminding us of, that's the other piece. And I don't think even those discussions have occurred yet, other than looking at state parks as the funding entity, but then who's the doing entity? And so we still got to work that out. And I wholeheartedly agree with Lisa. I think the least we can do is get some of those resources to to or for the state land department to enforce a lot of those activities that are going on particularly their lands. Game and Fish may be an entity, the counties, I mean, the Peace Trail itself, and then what's our role? I think that's another big, big discussion that we've got to have, and I think we're just beginning to have those discussions too, so.
Remind us, what's the distance of the overall full master plan of the Peace Trail?
The master plan highlights roughly 675 miles as a loop trail. And I do have the breakdowns I can share with you if you'd like. It's highlighted in the master plan, but roughly 64% of that is on BLM. 15% is at municipalities. Bureau of Reclamation has about 5%. Human Proving Grounds is 3%. Private land is 1%. And then beyond that is very small pieces to other entities. So.
Whoever thought peace would be so difficult. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
And again, we'll just continuing updating us.
Absolutely.
Lisa, I know that you thought you might have to get off the call for a while. We have a few more items that are not action items, and then we're going to have a motion to go into executive session later on in personnel issue. Are you going to stay on, or are you going? Do you need to get off?
I'd like to stay on. I think the next agenda item is ballot.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
I'd like to stay on for that, and then I have to go. Secretary was very lucky to be looking at Secretary Ballot today.
Okay. So we'll keep you on for one more item. Terry, you're still on, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you for hanging in there. We'll still have a quorum then. So anyway, to Bouse with Mickey.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Matt and I have received several calls wanting to know an update of what's going on with the Bouse property. On July 11th, Deputy Director Frank West and I held an informational meeting at the Bouse Public Library. There were 20 to 25 people that were in attendance, and we spent 2 hours answering questions related to the project. The things that we stressed to the group is we're getting a more definitive, we're stepping back and getting a more definitive scope of work and costs, the detailed master plan that we've done by a contractor. We're ensuring State Parks has all the funding in place, not only for the acquisition and development, but also for staffing and future costs and ongoing costs for the park. We hope to bring the plan before the Joint Committee on Capital Review in November and possibly have another meeting in November in Bouse when more residents are in the town. This was also filmed on Facebook, and to date there have been over 2,400 views of this meeting we had. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It was pretty much general questions that we answered on that time.
Thoughts, comments? Please, Board Member Orr.
My question, thank you. My question, Mickey, is what was the tone of the stakeholder meeting? Are they in favor of it? Did they have concerns?
They were very supportive of the project.
Okay. Thank you.
And how many were at the library?
I'd say 20 to 25.
But you've had over how many Facebook reviews?
2,400.
Okay. Views, yes.
Any likes?
Any other? Yes, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, I think the benefit of having this town hall or this public meeting was there was an expectation with this property. It was pretty big. It was not only the acquisition, but what would this property look like? And I think my comments to the previous agenda item was the promise of the world was given to a lot of individuals about the implementation and the camping and the RVs and who knows what else that was being proposed out there was running a lot of those done and other park sources, none of which included outside the acquisition and spur for whatever other fund sources we're going to pay to build this. And saying is, you're creating this. How do you feel grantees out there about the future development, what this is going to look like, how are you going to maintain it, how many staff are we going to have to put out there, create this as a park, and on and on and on. And I think we wanted to really just reset or talk about what the expectations were, bring them down to a little bit more reality, and then have the discussion of, okay, shall we go forward? This is a very tricky one, and I've talked to, with Commissioner Atkins and others, and once you talk about using OHV funds, now you're going to get a whole different set of maybe not that level of support, but I think that was the discussion that we really wanted to have, to really bring people down to the ground here, in light of a lot of other things, the indirect cause and effect of this property, what it's going to have on the land department, other adjacent lands, and on and on. You can see this thing kind of snowball. In the meantime, Matt and I went up and spoke to the landowner. This landowner's been hanging on for a long, long time. And we explained it to him. I didn't tell him anything I haven't told you guys right now, and he understands. But he's also hanging on there. So I think at some point, we're going to have to say, go forward or not. But I think, for me, it was really, okay, we have the property, now what? And how are we going to build this out? And how much money is it going to cost? And then coming to you and talking to you as board members and saying, well, we're not going to do these things to do these things. But certainly the OHV fund component of that, I think kind of may have changed the tone a little bit in the room. Maybe, or maybe they didn't understand it, but I think you as board members do, and you understand what the limitations on funding that we have, and then make the tough decisions. So I think maybe we're coming to a decision point here, but I just wanted to really lay these cards out so you can make an informed decision.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to add another component to that, and that is the discussion that was started quite a while ago. As some of you may be aware, for those of you who aren't, the legislature and the executive gave authority to be able to charge out-of-state off-road vehicle owners for the detail. And while there was a good conversation that began among the three agencies, meaning Game and Fish, State Parks, and State Land, as far as the distribution of those funds, it was never concluded. The trust is being overrun with damage because of off-road vehicles, and until we can get a better understanding in our work with State Parks and Game and Fish, and I want you to know that there are active, ongoing conversations among all three of our organizations of tearing down barriers that have been existing for decades in some cases, that I am extremely hesitant to see this proposal go forward because it's going to bring an added layer of use in that area that I think will not be contained on the ski trail. And the trust does not have the resources, and the local governments are not in a position to be able to back us up, nor is Game and Fish, and certainly not State Parks, to be able to help us with those resources. We are land rich and resources poor, so it's like just, we can't get our arms around how we're going to manage all of that.
Understood.
And that's been my concern, in addition to water concerns, about this particular park proposal from the very beginning. It's like a launching point for an activity that is not well monitored at best. And there's a lot of damage across the state, not just on Trustland.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarity. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Terry.
On the other side of that, Lisa, if we would create some kind of space and opportunity, we're well aware there isn't much in terms of a state park feature in that area. They're already overrunning those lands like chaos. So we had some discussions about if we put some semblance of order to it, use it as an educational kickoff area, we might be able to do some positive turnaround in the environment. So I'm just throwing that out as a reminder that there's another side to that story. Thank you.
Thank you. Any thought, especially with the donor of the property, timeline? I mean, with the impression I get in listening to the director's reported, as well as with you, Mickey, this conversation just can't, it's not infinite. I mean, there's got to be some sort of a area, and it sounds like the residents are getting more clarity as to what all the issues are, and certainly the operational impact with finances, water resources, resources to be able to do it for the trail. Are we looking 30 days, 60 days? I mean, is there some sense of where we are before we either fish or cut bait?
We're getting a master plan. Like I said, we'll have definitive costs, at least for the operations and the development of the park. We'll have those costs pretty concrete, and we can go up or down whatever the board wants to have at the park. But those should be done within a month. That plan should be done in a month.
And is the owner aware of that?
Yeah, he's aware of that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the other part is, you know, and Mickey and his team have been following the board direction, right? And they've been, the only ones who can change that, of course, are you, if you wanted to change direction, whatever that is. But also that the legislature will have to approve this acquisition. And we've heard rumblings of very much, I think, both what Member Palmberg said and also what Commissioner Atkins has said. And we're kind of in this area that if there's, I think the purpose of this item is, if there's something out there that we can help you make a decision one way or another, what would that be? We can go back, that includes all of the board members, go back and answer questions, kind of get you to a point. But I think you're right, Chair. I don't think punting this, kicking the can down the road is going to work. It's not going to work for the landowner. He's been more than patient on this whole thing. But then there's still some outreach that we'll have to do, I think, with the OHV community and others about what your decision is. But if there's something that can help bring some clarity for you all to either continue on with the direction or to change it in whatever way, I think this is our opportunity to get that from you. And then maybe at the next board meeting or however we can do that is then bring it forward to you for a decision on go or no go.
Well, I think the master plan, that once we see that with those figures, that'll give us some substance that we can really take a look at.
Has ASCOT reviewed it as well?
Pardon me?
ASCOT reviewed, is there a committee on trails, is there anything connected to that group?
OFAG is
OFAG,
reviewed it.
okay.
Yes.
Just OFAG, not ASCOT.
So OFAG is then supportive with the information that they have as well?
Correct,
Is there
they are.
any-
But
and-
again, as Director Rochard mentioned, they don't know the impact until we have the master plan in place, how much funding is going to be used for this park. So we'll certainly bring that to them also.
and then identifying the sources and at the expense of what are we going to do
Correct.
this? So there's, it sounds like we're really getting to the point of decision based upon the information that will come from the master plan, both on construction and operations. At that point, we can put our fishing rods out into the water.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank
That's
you.
helpful. And Lisa, we'll catch you here in a few minutes after these other items. Thank you. September Park.
Thanks, Lisa.
September Park highlight, Lake Havasu State Park. Ben, this is good to hear. Thanks for coming. Bring us some joy.
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, good morning, and thank you for this great opportunity to come in and showcase what I consider to be the best park in our agency, Lake Havasu State Park. And if you look at...
Do you want a motion to that effect?
Some people in the room might say I've already asked for it many times over, but one of the things that we are well known, I like to think, and this picture here shows a different side of Lake Havasu State Park. It's our Arroyo Camino Interpretive Garden, and it's a spot of tranquility that's in the park. It's really a nice microcosm of showing the types of things that we do. It's very volunteer-driven. We have a couple, Ray and Hazel Finks, that spend hours each and every week cultivating this area. Ray was recently honored by our agency as the West Region Volunteer of the Year. We're very proud of that, and this is something that was started many, many years ago. It's something that our current West Region Manager, John Guthrie, shepherded during his tenure. Pete Knotts, who had the honor of speaking to this group a short while ago, took care of it during his tenure, and now I'm blessed with the opportunity to do the same. And it's something that's visited by people from all over the world. We have a guest log book, and it's something that really just shows the different types of things we do. And it's something that most people might not know about at a park, that it has the kind of volume of visitor that we do. And if you look at the next slide, it highlights that visitation. For the last several years, Lake Havasu State Park has drawn over 500,000 visitors. It's a very large number. It's something that I believe we do very well. We take a lot of pride in making sure that we do that with a safe, professional, clean park that features all the amenities that we're able to provide in an affordable, family-friendly way. That's a little difficult to do at times, especially given the reputation of Lake Havasu City. But I think, you know, if we think back to the MTV days and all that, and we've all gone quite a bit past that now, it really has changed a lot. That recreation dollar is something that people have a lot of flexibility in how they spend it. We work very hard to make sure that they're willing to spend it with us. If you'll notice, throughout the year, we have a solid visitation throughout the year. You'll notice some spiking in the last couple of years in our January, February, and March dates. A lot of that comes from the fact that we are fortunate with some of the investments that we've made, that we have the infrastructure to repurpose some of our facilities that are being used very heavily in the boating season. We're able to turn those into use for special events during the off-boating time. So it's something where we've been able to fill in that calendar just like most private businesses would. And if you look at how that translates into revenue, we've cleared $2 million over the last couple of years, and we've steadily increased. And we've done that where there might have been a price increase a few years back. We haven't had that recently. We've done very well with drawing more people, building on our reputation, doing a good job each and every day, and making sure that we're earning that trust of the public. And when they do have the choice to spend with that dollar, that they're choosing to spend it with us. And that's something that we try to show throughout the agency. We're very proud of how we do it at Lake Havasu State Park. One of the things that's interesting, I think, is if you look at our business by segment, we get roughly 2/3 of our visitation dollar through the day use. Our season passes, which are very popular, also very affordable. If we look at our pass programs, we probably see for every individual pass that's gone out, be it a standard pass, a commercial pass, or our annual pass, we see that translate in between 80 to 90 visits to the park throughout the course of the year. It's a great program. It's very affordable. It opens that opportunity to a lot of people. And it's a growing segment for us, but it's still, that also means while we have 1/3 of our revenue coming from the pass sales, we have 1/3 coming from the transient visitor who's just in the area for a couple of days, who knows how long. They're paying to be in the park, and we're getting 1/3 of our revenue out of that segment. And if you look consistently, we're getting 1/3 of our revenue from camping. So we're seeing that high occupancy rates, those types of things that we look to do year in and year out. But it also shows that we're paying attention to it. So we're making a decision to make an investment. We're making a decision to how do we improve that. We're basing it not on just our thoughts and feelings, but we're listening to the public. We're trying to provide that, and we're trying to continuously improve each and every day. One of the things that I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight would be those different groups that come through. Fishing is very popular along the west coast of Arizona. We do very well with that. And not just the larger groups. We are very proud of the fact that the FLW Costa series is returning to the Lake Havasu area this year. That's a national series that comes to town. Sometimes it's on TV, sometimes it's not. We also are going to welcome back the One Bass Magazine tournament. These are national events that draw people from all over, and you'd be amazed at some of the boats that come through our door, and some of the boats they actually give away just for catching fish. And you can make a few bucks, I'm told. I haven't made any, but I'm told. But we also, in addition to that, we have a lot of local smaller events, smaller circuits, things like that. We have an awful lot of 30 to 50 person events that come through. And there's just a list there of some of the different things we have. If we go to the next slide, this is some of the bigger events. We have added some new events. The Patty Fest that was there last March and hopes to return this year is a new event for us. We're looking at adding 2 more events this coming year with an outdoorsman exposition as well as possibly a new country music festival. So we're drawing new events. And if you look at some of them, like say for example, the Havasu Balloon Festival that's about to enter its 10th year, we're able to do some unique things because of what we have and because of who we are. As part of the Arizona State Parks and Trails, we can offer a site and services that are difficult to match through private sector or anywhere else in Arizona. We partner an awful lot with Lake Havasu City to make some of these things happen. But in the case of the Balloon Festival, for example, they're entering their 10th year. They hope to, at the finish of this 10th year, be able to state that they've returned over $1 million in donations back to the community. They're able to do that in part because of the partnership and the work that we do together with their organization, the Arizona State Parks and Trails. Again, that's just one example. Buses by the Bridge is another great example. If you've never been, if you never got to Woodstock, I do welcome you to come out to Buses by the Bridge. It is an amazing thing. Last year they broke another record with over 750 VW campers. It's got to fit a certain criteria to fit in that 750, because if you do, you get to camp in this area of the park, and if you don't, you got to camp over there. And so they had 750. But the biggest thing about that is it's a volunteer organization. They put on this great event. It's a fantastic event. We're thrilled to be the host site for it. And it's something where they specialize in giving back money to the community, but on the small scale. $5,000 to the high school, $2,000 to the food bank. And they continue to talk about how they wouldn't be able to do what they do unless they had the partnership with Lake Havasu State Park and the Arizona State Parks and Trails. So that's something we're very proud of. YouTube it. It's out there. It's a great thing. But going on to the next one, there's also things where we take the lead. We have partnered now with Teach a Child to Fish. It's a program that we bring in to, where people get a complete fishing kit and kids get to go out and fish for free that day. We set up some other activities, and there's people there to chaperone them and teach them how to do that. With our relationship with the fishing community, we're able to get some premium people out there to help them out. We have things where the Sea Scouts have an event every November in our park, where they not only combine the merit badge programs, but they also do some service projects. Again, we draw people from California, Arizona. We've had different events where we draw from the Four Corners, and it's something we're very proud of, and we do try to take the lead in those. This November, for the first time, we'll be hosting, in conjunction with Anderson Toyota and the Havasu Classics Car Club. They're moving an event that was at the car dealership into the park, with 100% of the proceeds going to local veterans charities. That wouldn't have happened without our partnership, and we get the ability to do that because of the work that we have here at Arizona State Parks and Trails. So I could go on and on with some of those. I don't want to take up too much time today, but I would like to hit some of our more recent developments when I talk about the fact that we invest in our infrastructure. We're always looking to make improvements. We did just recently open 5 new bathroom buildings that all have 6 units, and you want to talk about popularity. I think that we really grew in a lot of people's eyes when we were able to finally open those. And so we're very proud of how those turned out. We're still doing some landscaping on some of them, but they're getting great public review. And we soon will be opening. We're still working on some final touches, some of the things we want to fix up, because like a lot of the things we do with our business plans, we may take a little longer to do certain things, but when we do them, we want to make sure they're right, make sure they're set to go, and make sure that when they do open and people can start using them, that they receive great reviews. It's very important for what we do. We need those people coming back. As I stated before, they have a lot of flexibility to where they invest their recreation dollar. We want to make sure when they're doing it at our park, and I'm sure for all the parks, we want to make sure that we're earning each and every one of those dollars in a positive manner. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody has any about Lake Havasu State Park.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Comments, thoughts? No.
You know, Dan, on the special events, I recognize how they can be, while we consider ourselves partners, they can be a tax on the burden. As you approach that, how do you, are you keeping track of the amount of time and resource and finances that you're contributing to the events?
We definitely are. If you were to look back at the revenue things, you'll also see in conjunction with the attendance spiking up during that time, that our revenue has. We do individual negotiations with each group. As they become available, we are sitting down with each and every one of those organizations, and as we talk to them, we point out that the key to a partnership, and we want to be the best possible partner, we need them also to be a great partner, make sure that they're spending a little, that we're covering the costs, so we're working together on that. I think we've done very well with it, and we continue to do so.
That's great, thank you.
Very articulate presentation, Dan. Thank you. I know, very impressive. Just 2 quick comments. First of all, who are the local stakeholders that have been with you for all these years in Lake Havasu that you've come to rely on as your primary partners?
Well, we work an awful lot with Lake Havasu City. not only for the emergency services that they provide, but for example, our water system is all tied into Lake Havasu City. So we work very closely with them on many different levels, their operations department all the way up to the fire department, the police department, and the mayor's office. So we do an awful lot with that. We also rely greatly on the Mojave County Sheriff's Office. They have jurisdiction over the water, so 1 foot off the beach, you're in there. So we do that, and we've been fortunate enough to be included in a lot of multi-jurisdictional organizations. So we benefit greatly from that. We also are members of the Lake Havasu Chamber of Commerce. So we participate in those activities, as well as the Go Lake Havasu Tourism Bureau. So we have things like that that we work with as far as organizations between the Sea Scouts, some different fishing clubs that we work with, the vintage car people. We have vintage trailer campouts. Some of the organizations are for-profit, and some are charity board operated. New Horizons is another one that does a charity board fishing group that puts a lot of that money back into the community as well.
Do you have a Friends of 501c3 type organization that just is dedicated to the Havasu State Park?
Not at Lake Havasu State Park that I'm aware of.
Okay. Just curious. Other question is, and maybe Dawn would have a better take on this, do you track the non-Arizona tourists that are coming in terms of percentage-wise, particularly Californian that are coming over? I'm just curious what that, if there is a way of measuring the out-of-state impact with your park, since it's right there on the...
We've had different times where we've done that. For example, at some of the special events, and especially if it's a special event where we're participating, the Sand and Water Expo, which is in the early November, is one that comes to mind, where our OHV people were there as a participant as well. We track the volume coming in, and we do spot surveys on where people are coming from. We did that as part of the first inaugural Patty Fest that we had, and saw that it was about 50% local, 50% traveled, be it Arizona, California. We also have the ability to tap into certain things. I don't want to get too detailed or too in depth with it, but for example, when we do the PASS program, and with our great partnership with Arizona Highways and the ADOT, we do get a mailing address, and so we can do a breakdown of how many of those are California residents, how many are Arizona residents. It gets a little tricky when you start talking about vacation homes, things of that nature. And we're currently also underway, and I don't want to take away from what somebody else might present, but we are underway with our visitor survey. And so we're doing things like that constantly, and we also have the database of when you make a campsite reservation, we get your contact information, your address, and we do a lot of back and forth surveying with that as well.
Just, I want to applaud what a wonderful example of community outreach you are. You make the entire agency look great.
Well,
so
thank
you for that.
Well, thank you. And again, I'm fortunate to be here. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of great people here in this agency as well.
Thank you, Dan. Go ahead, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, I think to add on to what Member Orm said was that I get to meet with the mayor quite a bit. There's a lot of issues going on over there, and I got to see Havasu, and I'll tell you, from Dan's leadership and being a member of that community, to hear that from a mayor's mouth, it really is the gold standard for being part of a community, a very big national community. One of those trips, I got to see them setting up Patty Fest, and Dan and John Guthrie gave me the tour, and oh my goodness, that is huge. And then to see an operation like that, and then the amount of time staff has to commit to that, and managing that crowd, it's remarkable. But I'll tell you, that view that he has up there on the screen, when you're standing on that back porch of those cabins and you look across out over Lake Havasu, it is $1 million view. And so those are remarkable cabins. The development crew was working with the park really put some gems along the water there. And when those things get open, I think Dan's right. I mean, there's going to be a waiting list years long. And I think the view is worth it just in and of itself. But if you can make a trip up there to see what these guys do, it's a really, really gold standard park in my mind, I think. There are many others, but these guys having to deal with those kind of numbers with the limited staff that they have, Havasu is doing nothing but growing. And Havasu State Park is part of that community, and that's what the mayor is constantly reiterating, is that we are part of that greater society, and the economic revenue that's coming from recreation, we're embedded perfectly in there, so keep it up, guys. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Great
Thank you.
job. Thank you very much. All right, Dawn, would you come up, please, and do a trail plan update?
Mr. Chairman, member of the board, thank you for having me today. We just wanted to keep you apprised of what's going on with the Trails Plan. Since we last saw you, we have been working with partners in Brainstorm to develop our random sample survey and the public questionnaire. It was edited based on the working group feedback, and of course you know Orm Lewis, our board member, is also on that working group. We did extensive pre-testing over that time and made some changes and simplified the questionnaire quite a bit. We had received some feedback from the working group that the questionnaire was too complicated. So we did extensive pre-testing to make sure that we brought it down to an appropriate 7th grade level. And then we launched the random sample survey on the 31st of,
Not 6th,
of
not
August.
8th, 7th grade.
Hey. Specific with numbers. So one thing that we changed, more data collection versions of the survey so that people can kind of decide, once we get a hold of them, how they would best like to take the survey. And so we attribute a lot of the success of the survey to date to kind of how customer-centric it has become. So people are able to take it on their digital, on their phones, on their iPads, on their laptops, however they would like to take it. So please, next slide. Okay, so just to give you an idea of kind of some of Deb and her team's successes, for some of the standalone counties, we're done. Maricopa County, Pima County, Pinal County, Yavapai, we are complete. Coconino County has turned out to be challenging for us because of the fact that it has such a small percentage of the population, lots of land, lots of trails, small percentage of the population. So we're continuing to collect in those areas, but Yuma County also very close to being complete. And Apache, Gila, and Navajo, of course, is a challenge. It's not verized. 38% classify themselves as non-users, and we are getting demographic information even from the non-users. So go ahead. So one benefit of doing a customer-centric approach is that our data collection is mirroring the census data fairly closely. If you look at the age groups, this also shows the 2015 study, which was primarily a landline study. So the blue bar is 2019, green bar is 2015, and the bubbles above the bars is the census data. So at the end, we will not have to tweak those numbers statistically. We've also been working with University of Arizona, and primarily, I think I have Dari Duval of the U of A team on the phone. Dari, are you on the phone? Which limits the amount of questions I can answer in this particular regard, so just to warn you. So we are looking to do the economic value of motorized and non-motorized trails in Arizona to Arizona residents specifically. So we define economic value as how well off someone is made by using trails. And for trails and other natural amenities, we determine that by people's willingness to travel to a trail, to use a trail, and that's called the travel cost method. So that's the method they'll be using. It was a better fit for this data, who we are collecting data from, so an economic impact analysis was not the best method given who we were collecting data from. But we think that this will give us useful information for both motorized and non-motorized communities. This study is going to consist of 2 pieces. Next slide, please. The first piece is the visitor flow matrix. So we're going to find out where people live and where they're going to recreate on their trails. We're asking them, where's your favorite trail? Where is the trail that you visit the most often? And where's the furthest trail that you've traveled to in the last year? So we're using that piece of information to tell us where people are flowing in Arizona in regards to trails. And that data can be used to inform an economic impact study in the future for non-motorized trails. And the second piece is the travel cost analysis. So we're going to assess the demand for trails, and we're using the distance people travel to get there, the frequency of their trail use, and also their total trail use. So those are the types of data that we're collecting in order to inform this study. Since the last update, I think you can go Yeah, so since the last update, U of A has been working to develop and pre-test their set of questions. They provided those for the random sample survey and our public survey, which is getting ready to launch. They're compiling their secondary data that's going to be used for their analysis, and they're preparing their statistical models. So as soon as Partners in Brainstorm is complete with the random sample survey data collection, we will shift that data over to U of A, and they will start their process. So that is all going very well and very smoothly. In addition, we have added somebody to our team. Claire Credens is a master's student at Arizona State University, and she is helping the team to draft the Trails Plan document. So right now she's working on a literature review. She's looking at all of the other states' trails plans that were recommended by ASCOT, in addition to some others, and also looking to see what the literature says is going on in trails in the U.S. generally. And our next steps in the process, I'm working with our guest authors. Out of our working group, some of the people in our working group said that they would be happy to draft a piece of the Trails Plan related to their expertise. So I'll be working with them to get those pieces. We're going to schedule our next working group meeting for this winter. We're going to present that data to them, and we're going to talk priorities with them. And then if we do have a fourth meeting, it will be related to action items related to those priorities. You will see the completed Trails Plan come before you. Actually, let me back up a minute. We will be sending out the public survey. So this is the survey that everybody can contribute to. We will be sending all of our board members links to the survey with an introduction about the survey, why people should take it, what it's going to be used for, all that. So if you would please distribute that to your networks, anybody you know that uses trails, is interested in trails, we would love to have as many people participate as would like a voice. So we'll be sending that to you. We're going to launch October 1st. That will come before you. You will have an opportunity to come have left.
Melanie, just remind me, what state parks do we have in Coconino County?
Reardon Mansion is in Coconino
Reardon
County,
Mansion.
and I believe that Slide Rock is also considered Coconino County. Sedona borders Yavapai and Coconino.
Well, and again with NAU right there, I'm just curious, can we somehow really infiltrate NAU, because all of those are, for the most part, young people?
Yes.
And I would expect they would be very technologically adept at going into this thing. If we can really promote it through the university, that might get your numbers back up again.
Right. So for the random sample survey, I believe we are using a cell phone database, which would include a lot of the students at NAU. So I think that they are sampling from that database, which would include NAU students, correct. Now, we might have had a delay in August and early September as school was just coming into session.
Right.
So after Labor Day, we were kind of expecting it to pick up a bit, and it has a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, but the public survey, we would be happy to, we have colleagues at NAU, we're going to send them to all of the student outdoor recreation groups that we have identified, in addition to anybody else that we can identify and think of.
Well, and as John was, do you have comments before I take credit for what you were whispering in my ear? As John said, I mean, a lot of the municipalities and the counties have done similar visitor surveys, and it would be good to use this as kind of a benchmark, because obviously this is good information for Peoria. It's good information for Pima County and Tucson, because you can see trends in usage on the demographic part of it. So I think really we can become kind of a library and a real resource for other trail research and applied policy areas as it comes to things like operational impacts, maintenance backlogs, all the kinds of things that go into keeping those trails safe and pure for hikers.
Yes, absolutely. And we also have our visitor survey going on, and we are partnering with other organizations to make sure that data also informs local community efforts and other things as well. So in both areas, we're.
Sean?
So a question that has just occurred to me, particularly as it relates to Coconino County, is do you have any way of accessing out-of-state visitors to that area who are recreating on our trail?
So the random sample survey is specifically for Arizona residents only.
Okay,
So that would get to part-time and full-time Arizona residents. We are also using part-time Arizona residents. But for the public survey, that's where we would kind of, and so that's networking and press releases and all kinds of.
It's just such a tremendous
Yes.
Tourist influx.
Yes, I think that's why we pulled Coconino out specifically as its own county, but it really only has 2% of the Arizona population in it.
It does.
So in getting a random sample survey of 385 surveys from 2% of the population, it's served to be a little tougher than we.
Okay.
For the public survey, we expect to hear from that
community.
Very good. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
thank
Good-
you all.
Good information. So Tim, back up on the management system update as our final agenda discussion item.
The chairman, members of the board, again, Tim Franquist. Third time's the charm, so this won't be nearly as challenging or heady topic as the first two, so this is a lot more fun. As you're probably aware, at large, the Arizona has come up with what they call the Arizona Management System, which is really based, slide there, really based on what they call a lean management system. So this often gets confused for staff and a lot of the folks, even executive leadership in the state. So if anybody's ever dealt with manufacturing, particularly in a lean environment, you have Lean Six Sigma, it's the toolbox, those are the things you're doing day in and day out. Then you have management systems. And those management systems run the gamut from the old tribal systems to the bureaucratic systems to what's called management by walking around, management by objectives. So throughout time, we've had many different management systems been out there. What the AMS system looks to do, or a lean management system looks to do, is take all the best things for management systems and put them into this system. Therefore, it's a lean management system. So that often gets confused. So you hear Lean Six Sigma, that's the toolbox, that's a lot of the analytical portion. And then we got here where we have the overall management system. So we actually started off with the mission. Like, you guys are certainly aware of the mission, why that's so important. If we can jump to the next slide. Lean is all about maximizing the mission. So at the end of the day, what we're looking to do, the lean management system looks to maximize, optimize the mission. What you can see here in a simple graphic is the top is kind of what we look at our processes. These are typically what they look like if they're on lean. We know through some statistics that even a well-run process that hasn't undergone the lean process has 97% of waste built into it. That's not because people are doing things wrong. That's because it's not because management's wrong. It's because you can see that sometimes the sequence is out of order. Sometimes we're over-processing things. What the lean management system says is, hey, let's map that out. Let's take a look at it. Make sure our steps all make sense. Make sure these are value-added steps. What we hope to do is to get to the bottom portion. Now, we do that through a few different, what's called pillars of lean. Define customer value. So you're starting to hear that a lot in the agency. We've had that discussion about the delegation agreement. Who's the customer? Who's the end user of that delegation? You kind of started hearing us talk about it. What's the customer? The board in this case. What do you guys value? What do you want to see? You heard Dan talk about that with the partners. Very customer-centric. It's really important to start off all our discussions process-wise right there. What is our customer value? The next piece is we map that value. This seems like a simple, but it's a crucial step is let's see it visually. Do these steps make sense? Are they sequentially ordered in a way to be efficient? Do we even need this step in the first place? So that mapping becomes really, really important. Also because it documents our process. Now we have a process that we agree on. This is what we can manage to work on versus if we talk in most cases about a process that we haven't documented, talk to 5 different people, you'll come up with 5 different, slightly different processes. By the time you get to the end of that process, you're going to have a lot of deviations on what the output is. The other key piece is create flow, which is a fancy word for eliminating waste. So in government, we like to cover our butts. We like to over-process to make sure we're super safe. In some cases, we over-process. In a lot of cases, we don't utilize all our talent. So that's a big form of waste. If we have all this wonderful knowledge, we've sat an individual say, here's your bucket, you do this job, but don't do anything else outside that. When they're quite capable of doing a lot more, so unutilized talent becomes a form of waste. And then ultimately, what we do is we want to seek perfection. We want to do the plan, do, check cycle. So we don't just set up a great process and we never revisit it. This process brings us about every 6 months to a year to say, is this still the right process? Does it make sense? Business needs change, political ecosystem change. Does our processes still match that? So it's really a structured way to go about change. It's a structured way to deal with risk. And it's just a great way to optimize your mission. Next slide. And this is what it's all about. What you can see here is the wrench. It's not a hammer. So as we start talking metrics and we talk systems, this is all about how do we get better as an organization. You can see here the real key monikers, we focus on the process, not the people. Without the process in place, we often get very raw with each other. Folks are not doing what we think they should be doing, usually due to communication issues where most of the time we find it's actually a bad process. It's not the individual, it's not that they're not trained properly. It's not even a communication system. We don't have a documented process. And so what Lean really talks about is focus on the process, not blaming people. Next slide. So what are the key pieces to a quote Lean management system? First is True North. Now this is something I don't think we've talked a whole bunch about, though I know Bob started a discussion about the June timeframe, which is called the why. Why do we do what we do? True North is just simply another way to say that. What is our higher vision? So it's actually not the mission, but it's how do we go about our work on a higher plane to accomplish the mission. I've always used the Toyota example because that's where you see a lot of this come out of. Toyota's quote True North is not to be the #1 car company in revenues and production. Toyota's True North is to be the safest vehicle done environmentally friendly in a very safe manner for employees. They concentrate on that, and then if they accomplish the True North, then by definition, they get these different mission outcomes. That's something that we applaud Bob for coming up with the why, and something that we probably could work with the board on. What is our True North? What is that thing? The next piece here is standard work. Again, what this does is more memorializes how we go about doing the work. So in terms of our development, how do we go about project management? In terms of the parks, how do we stack our day in a systematic way to make sure folks are going about their daily work in an organized and efficient manner? The next piece is visual management. You'll actually even start to see these artifacts up now. So we refer to these things as flow boards, metric boards. But what's nice about this is Bob and I aren't walking around with a secret manager report that says, hey, this is the performance of the agency. We show up periodically to say, what's going on? Our metrics red. What's good about this is it's very transparent. We can all see where we're at in certain processes, how are we doing with certain metrics. And the difference here is now instead of an executive director or deputy director showing up at your desk with a super secret report, we show up to ask, how do we help? You can see there's an issue, it's very visual, or another staff member maybe with expertise in that area can step up and say, hey, I can see you're struggling a little bit, how do I help? Again, the key here, wrench, not the hammer, it's all about asking for help, applauding those that step up and ask for help. But this is how we can see everything through our visual management system. I'll go into a little bit of detail a little bit later. What you'll see up here in the red is people systems, and we can't stress this enough. Lean is not about cutting your workforce, it's not about trying to cut your budget, it's about doing the same amount of mission with those resources. Our missions tend to grow. Unfortunately, our resources don't tend to grow, at least linear with those. And so how do we become efficient? But what Lean says is be people-centric. Bob and I got a chance to attend a cabinet meeting with Mr. Daly, who had come down to speak. The governor was there for the whole time, so we really loved this speech. What Daly kept referring to is culture, culture, culture. We didn't hear a word about Lean. We did not hear a word about many, many other things. What they said is culture, culture, culture. Now, Lean is important. The playbook is important. But what we have to do is stay focused on our people. How do we recruit them? How do we retain them? How do we make it a fun and productive environment? So we highlight this in red because the Lean system, the Arizona management system, is supposed to be a people-centric system. And that's something that we're very interested in making sure that we're standing up here. The other pieces here is what they call leader standard work and behavior. So what is leadership's role in this? We have a catchphrase called Gemba, which is we go to the point of work occurrence. So again, Bob and I don't just hang out in the office all day, away from staff. This is an opportunity for us to very frequently and periodically go out and ask, how do we help? Can we go to the point of work occurrence versus what usually happens is we won't find an issue until way, way, way down the line. This gives us an opportunity through the visual management system to see issues right up front and then give the resource we need to fix that problem. And then the last is accountability systems. So again, a lot of conversations happen in government, a lot of conversations. Unfortunately, they don't get documented, there's no action item, there's no process. 6 months later, we're back at the table and having those same conversations again. And what the accountability systems do is puts in a structured process to say, if I've agreed to do this for Bob, I'm going to do this by this date. Bob's going to hold me accountable, and there's a structured way to do that. Again, it's not a blaming system. It's how we actually move the ball forward versus we have conversations. Everybody thinks somebody else is the owner, and 6 months we come back and find there was no owner. So again, just a systematic way to ensure that we get from point A to point B by the time frames we do that, and we're able to hold each other accountable. So Has anybody ever seen the agency's or the state's scorecard? And I meant to print this out. Okay, so what's nice about that is the EMS system looks to link work all the way from frontline work all the way to the government division. It's an excellent system. The fundamental map, I think, gives us an opportunity to do that. So why would the parks want to be optimized? Why do they want visitors? Well, the governor's vision is for Arizona to be the best place to work, play, recreate, and get an education. I think it's excellent. We're in there twice, play and recreate. And so again, what we do here every day at the park, every park manager is that. Okay, so some of the artifacts you're going to see come out of the EMS system, of course, metrics. That can get folks really concerned because again, this does often feel like a hammer. Is if I show up, your metric is red, it's not meeting expectations, am I going to get in trouble? The key here is that our metrics are all for continuous improvement. It's a signal to tell us there's an issue. It's a fantastic way to start to look at these issues and kind of these. The metrics that you see up here are in our strategic plan. It's not the whole set of metrics, just a key piece, but you can see in the director's vision to have these 4 Ps. We're trying to align our metrics to that. Again, metrics tell us whether we're winning the game or losing the game. We feel like we're starting to fall back, what resources we need to do to move obstacles and win the game up here. And what that means is for every group or unit, we should have some key performance indicators. There should be a huddle that goes around that, just a periodic 15-minute per day, how we doing, what things need to be escalated, what our metrics tell us. We will do that all the way up to the director's level, so there'll be key performance indicators for us, and then as we go to the programmatic level and then down to the staff level, and then we get into just to a repetitious routine of having that discussion, what are the metrics saying. We'll have that at each tier level. Again, a piece of the Arizona management system. Okay, my favorite, what we call flowboards. If I had one Arizona management system piece that I could keep, if it all went away, it would actually be flowboards. The reason that's important, and we just had the discussion with the vice chair, our knowledge-based work, we can't ask for slow a team, our project management team, to kind of stand this up, get a metric. What this will allow us to do is put each and every additional into what the term is in the and on. So if you ever went into a manufacturing environment, you'll see literally what's called a red and on line. There's a problem. It's literally gets cold, it needs help. So the same concept is here is if work slows or stop, folks pull their hand on and we run and get resources so we can get the obstacle removed and get things back moving again. Again, we're going to concentrate on the development team because right now I think that's probably our area of most concern, just in terms of kind of picking up the pace, moving us forward on some key projects. Darla's, when she has stepped in, she's already got the process moving. So again, this will just allow us some additional visibility into the process. And then we can see down here is just kind of the 2 artifacts that go along with that. When we have issues, we memorialize it in what's called a tick sheet. And then we run that data for a little bit, and then we move to what's called a Pareto analysis. And what that allows us to do to make sure that we're solving the most impactful problems versus picking what are one outs and just allows us to center our resources. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how the process works. Standard work. This is another key one. So this will be a little different for state parks. So I originally came from the Department of Environmental Quality. We make a lot of widgets, permits, plans. It makes it very easy for a flow board. It took me a couple weeks to step into this environment where we're a service economy. So I had to kind of change my thinking a little bit where the flow boards would be very useful for the development team or where you're actually making widgets, and we certainly have a few of those areas. But for the majority of our staff, they're in the parks. So a flow board's not going to help them. So standard work is going to be key for our deployment and our success in the parks because again, what we can do with the parks is how do we stack our day in an efficient way. We start with bathrooms for the first hour, then we move to getting folks into the parks, and then we start to clean cabins, or vice versa. But stacking that day in an efficient manner and then consistently doing that will be absolutely crucial. The good part of that is when Bob and I went and visited the northern parks, Slide Rock already has a similar process in place. The good thing is that I think we're going to be able to leverage areas of excellence already there, tweak, fine tune, and then roll that out at large. So again, for some of these parks, it won't even be a new concept. They're already doing it. So we'll be able to leverage off that. Okay. The other really, really crucial artifact is structured problem solving. The reason this is important, so many times we think we understand the problem, and a lot of times we do that without data. Oftentimes when we take a much more structured problem solving, we find it wasn't the problem we thought we had in front of us. Therefore, we had put a solution in place and we didn't allow a solution. So a real crucial portion to then finding our issues on that last set of floorboards is, okay, do we understand the problem thoroughly? Do we have a true root cause analysis? And now the solution should actually fix the problem. And so again, we stay very disciplined, structured problem solving. That'll be something we see come out of our floorboards as we see problems develop there. We memorialize that in our standard work, and we do it all over again. Next slide. Okay, so big drum roll. So here's our plan. We're blessed to have Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. They have a very mature lean management system there. It's a lot of where it was born out of. They've offered to train 20 of our people between October and November. So we're going to take them up on that offer. We're going to, again, concentrate on the development team. That should get most of our management staff through there. And what that's meant to do is increase the number of trainers in-house. Once we've done that, then we can spread those trainers out to the parks and train the trainers there. We can kind of start to develop that culture in-house. So it's a big thank you to DEQ for the help there. Once we kind of get ourselves up and going, we'll be able to become self-sustainable. We think we can do that by August of next year. So we've got a few steps to get trained up. By November, December, I think we'll really actually start seeing momentum on this. Some of the floorboards will get set up in key areas. So there'll be certain pockets that are already starting to leverage lean. And then by the end of August, we should at least have most of the staff here at State Parks trained up, at least familiar with the vernacular, knowing how to escalate, how to do some structured problem solving. But in a nutshell, this is kind of what we're looking at. So that is the fire hose version of AMS in our deployment. Happy to take questions.
Wow. Very thorough. Extremely thorough on it. Yes, comments, thoughts. Bob, obviously you're one of several state agencies. I assume all of you are in a similar kind of protocol with the reporting system and the scorecards and all the like. I know in past meetings we've had the scorecard to kind of see where the agency lies compared to previous years and the like. I know Dawn's going to miss those reports before. So, I mean, a lot of work there and a lot of time. Obviously you have to do it, but are you pleased with how this is working, and especially this new training effort?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members, yes. I think when we had, certainly Tim is the leading expert, but we've got experts in the agency, like, Dawn and Catherine have really been carrying a lot of the load. And you quickly get to see, once it's up, the visual side, is, boy, we were sure we were measuring a lot of things that we either didn't know why or they really weren't going anywhere. And I think it was a great opportunity to come in and for us to determine our own destiny here. That we're not, we have measures that we need to report, and they're going to roll up, like Tim showed you, that flow up to the governor's office. But there's a lot of things that a lot of frustration within the agency of, we're not an enterprise or an agency unto our own. We have outside forces that pull us in a lot of different directions. So there's opportunity to improve that as well. But we really are starting to really boil down to what's really, really important. And I think Tim hit on it early in his presentation, was the why. Why do we all do what we do? And it quickly came to light of the public. And the parks exist for the public. And there's that core function, is the parks and the management of those parks, that if we're not keeping an eye on our visitors and what their needs are, and the information Dawn is gleaning from them, from surveys, and now we're rolling this up to you to make decisions, I think it was a disservice. I don't think we were looking at that. We are now. But the why we exist is to provide parks and recreation. Everything else is either some sort of a support function, including myself, including the board. We're support to that operation. And it brought clarity to why we do what we do. And I think it's going to help us align a lot better. And we're not measuring things because it's gee whiz. There better be a direct link to something greater or something bigger or something that's going to drive us in the future, or all of the above. That we're not just going to measure. And the other part of that is with our guidance, our staff's coming up with this. it's coming from, the boots on the ground to the practitioners, the subject matter experts, and they're saying, Bob, this is really what matters. When I have my day, when I'm getting pulled in 1,000 different directions at my desk, they know now what's the most important, and I'm okay with that. I think there's a lot of things we've been doing that, may have mattered to some, but in the greater scheme, it really didn't affect the operation and the core function. We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go, and we're going to focus on what's really important. So this is really a clarity effort, and it's going to change. We may make mistakes, but we're going to go about it as open-minded, open-eyed as possible, but also including for the board. You're part of this as well.
I hope so.
And there's processes that we're going to embark on. I think one of those is about the agenda and the commission or the board meeting process. That there's a lot of people that have a say in the development say of the agenda, and we need to get this thing pegged because it like this, there's a lot of waste that was going on, and how can we now lean this process to make it for staff requesting agenda items, to the Attorney General's office review of those agenda items, to the publication, and on and on and on. And then it's just one example where you all will be directly affected by it. But I think this is something that another issue for the board to be briefed on regularly. So you've got input in it. If there's something that we may want to change, we're really sort of, I think we're kind of in the shaky toddler stage right now, and we're going to fall on our butts, and then we're going to get back up and keep going. But it's I think staff, I'll try to speak for them, but I think most of them have said we get to pick and we get to choose and we get to measure, and that it's a learning process. It's not a hammer. It's a learning process, and so I think that's probably one of the biggest keys is that they're developing this and they're buying off on it. I certainly don't know everything they do, neither does Tim, but that's where their expertise comes in, and now we can craft it. So it's, as you can tell, I'm a little excited.
That's good.
But I think it's a great thing that we would love to stay in front of the board as much as you would like to keep you updated on this, because it does. It directly affects you, and it helps your oversight of what the agency is doing, which I think is absolutely one of your main goals, is you're giving us the oversight and setting policies, and like Tim talks about, those andons. Those andons may be legislative action. They may not be just small, and so those are the things that we need to be constantly be feeding back up to you at the board level.
Well, I'm glad you convinced ADEQ, Tim, after you left, to come in and do the training for you to get that started. So that must have been a little bit of an influence for you. So that was good. Yeah. The visual on the problem-solving model. Can you just go back to that real quick? So, is it possible to use this kind of a critical thinking model with, for example, the Baus issue, and also with the BTA? I mean, I think if we're looking at sort of a very dynamic way of making sure that we are not just being overly political or we're being overly managerial, that we look at all the different areas. So using this kind of a model that'll help us as a board when we do determine policy, that you've gone through all of these various critical thinking steps, because in many cases the solution can be worse than the problem if we're not careful on what we jump to on some of these conclusions, on some of these sensitive issues that we'll be facing here in the next few months.
Mr. Chairman, I think exactly, and I think Tim's wheels were already spinning on this, but I think one of those, as you identify the process, and if you identify, like a great example would be is we know what the legislatures, when they're approving an acquisition, they're going to say, okay, Bob, how are you going to develop the park? How are you going to fund it? And what does that look like? And if we don't have that information coming forward, we know we're going to run into a wall. But I would say for our processes, we go back and learn, and now we bring that to the board up to that decision making, and not just say, oh, it's later on, or or don't worry, we'll get to that. And it's putting you all in a position of, well, geez, do I say no to an acquisition that a lot of people like, but I have this sort of fiduciary responsibility or whatever that may be. That, to me, that would be a process change to make that flow work a lot better, just as one example. So, the ship has sailed a little bit on some of these, but I think it hasn't gone out of sight that you can't change your mind, or as new information becomes available or whatever that may be. So to me, that's getting the decision-making process for you all, that we're bringing you everything we know, as much detail as you want before you make that decision, and then the rest, these shouldn't be obstacles after you make a decision. They should be considerations prior to, as much as we possibly can.
Very good. Appreciate that.
And that, as Bob said, that logic will come into every decision. In fact, you can kind of see us role modeling it today as here's what we know about the BTA problem. Here's what we may not know. Maybe there is a piece of information out there. So this should become all the way from the executive level to staff level. This always should be the problem-solving logic that we use.
Good. All right. Anything else?
I might add, Bob, the really important piece that really hasn't come up is that processes like this can build trust, both internally and externally, and beyond external, if that makes sense, to the customer. And to be able to go back and to put all the pieces of these puzzles, I commend you. It's absolutely enormous and difficult, and that your persistence in taking what's been successful and moving that forward. I think this is a chance to kind of look at that and like you said, put your stamp, make your identity, bring the team along, and take care of that frontline staff that really makes everything that we talk about, they make it happen, and to support them in the right way. So I really appreciated hearing that you both kind of referenced that, and what can we do to support them. And I know we all feel the same way. What can we do to make sure that customer experience, that first time, the learn to fishing, whatever that might be, that we're creating the future generations and the opportunities to connect with our beautiful state.
Yeah. Thank you for that, John. That is exactly the staff. Tim emphasized it with the red pentagon or whatever that was. Shape, but staff has to buy in. But the other part of that is that part of this that I see is empowering staff to make decisions. That it's not everything has to run to my office and make a decision. That it's the accountability side, but which is good and bad accountability. But you learn, and you have to delegate that authority to make those decisions down to the appropriate level, and you've got to keep it there. And you have to let folks make decisions and know that they're not going to get killed if they make the wrong one. And that's been a fear. It's a fear of state government in general. So you're absolutely right. It's letting staff run this and building something that will outlast our 10 years. And it will continue on, and staff's going to learn this and employ it, because you're right. It's the customer has to see that value. They don't know the inner workings of government and the bureaucracies and all of that.
And a lot of times they don't trust.
And they don't.
So when you can say that you're CAPRA accredited or you're award winning or you've done certain elements, and that becomes the evidence to them that there are the contributors to help build that trust. I think inherently that's one of our biggest, as government employees, that's one of our biggest challenges. That we don't get trust right off the bat. We have to earn it. And so these processes are certainly ongoing.
Yeah, and it goes exactly for internal, as there's that trust. Somebody somewhere along the line made the wrong decision, and next thing you know, there's a policy or there's a law that comes in, or statute or something, and it's, in some cases an overreaction. But if you're not allowing folks to make those decisions, and you prepare them as much as possible, and you avoid this knee-jerk reaction to create more bureaucracy to prevent something that only happened maybe once or twice in the history of the entire state. And we see that a lot, but what that does is, again, it's our folks are dedicated and they want to get their jobs done. Sometimes it's outside forces that are pulling on us, and it prevents them And I think that's the things that were my role, Tim's role, and others is to say, okay, maybe we need to make that phone call, or maybe we need to sit down with that other agency and explain to them that it's not just internal state parks, this is the entire government in and of itself. So yeah, it's really exciting to have that, but the key to all of this is having the data. It's really having the data to say, see, this is where we're finding barriers and obstacles, and for the most part, it's usually not ours. It's usually somebody else. So I like bringing those to light and then trying to find that root cause and then going forward.
Well, and I think too, as you develop case studies going forward, that we can then go back to and say, boy, here, the way we looked at this, how can we apply that in this particular case now to make sure that we're being more consistent, more transparent, we're not just jumping to a conclusion. I think all those things will be very helpful for us as a board. So, thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right. In the audience, again, thank you for your patience in listening. This has all been very valuable information. Item E, upcoming agenda items, is just to give an opportunity. I think, am I right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Item E to be any items or issues that any of the board members would wish to be considered for a future board item. Member Orm.
Yes. Well, my comments directly relate to everything we've just been talking about. And it was hard for me to stay quiet until we could get to item E, and that is that I'm just delighted to have heard everything I just did. I think for your board to be what you need us to be, which is informed, thoughtful, deliberate, and decisive. We need, at least I need, additional information. So, and this meeting serves as a great example of that. We have 2 board members on the telephone, and then there are those of us that are present. But what we received for this meeting was the agenda and a copy of the budget. So these 2 very valuable members that are on the phone have no ability to see these slides. And I think that should be fairly easy to provide. So if, when we receive our meeting notice, if it could actually be a complete packet, so that I'm not required to go back to the website in order to see the minutes, in order to read through them to know if they're accurate, it would be wonderful if you could help us do our jobs by providing that packet that's complete, so that Terry and Commissioner Atkins know the slides that we're looking at. They can shuffle through them as the meeting is in progress. It's obviously optimal if we can all be here in person. That is, as I say, optimal but challenging. So I know that when I've been on the phone, it's so frustrating to know I'm not seeing what everyone in the room is seeing. So if you can address that, I would be grateful. It would make me a better board member, and that's why I'm here.
Will do. Great
Thank
comment.
you.
Well stated. Thank you very much for that, Joe. Anything else? Joe?
I was wondering, we had a little bit of a presentation. Dan's hit on the cabins, and I've had a personal experience down south, touring some of those areas, and we did that agreement several years ago now.
Yep.
And I know that there was a lot, the execution was the CAVCO, the agreement with them. So if not next meeting, maybe one in the very near future, as you're opening some, what are the successes? What are the challenges? What are the next steps? Where are we in the agreement and the commitments associated with those cabins? I think we were certainly supportive of the idea of the glamping aspect, but then to hear that we're not going to electrify some of the primitive sites. So I think kind of thinking about what state parks has with this this initiative of the trailer cabins, and what kind of critical, and maybe our process or AMS process could be good on something like that, kind of mid-range if that's the case. But certainly an interest of mine. Thank you.
You bet.
Terry, anything that you would like to offer as an upcoming agenda item?
No, I'm good, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Orm?
I would appreciate an update on where we are with regard to Rockin' River.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, item number F, current events. Anything of interest that board members would like to express that's happened since we last got together? Hearing none?
Mr. Chair, I am heading to Baltimore for the National Recreation and Park Association Annual Congress, and that'll be all next week.
Very good. Hearing nothing else, and I would just reiterate Michelle's earlier comment about the Harshner Cavern event coming up for those of us, and it also falls in line of the week of our November board meeting, so maybe there's an opportunity we might be able to somehow combine the two together. So anyway, just throw that out as a potential. Call to the public. I know Janice is here from Arizona Heritage Alliance. Do you want, if you like, you can holler from there. That's great. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Larson, Board, Director, and staff, I'm Janice Piano, and I'm the President of the Arizona Heritage Alliance. As you're aware, or let me remind you, 2020 is the 30th anniversary of the Heritage Fund. Alliance members met recently with Jim DeVos, non-game branch manager at Game and Fish, and he said Game and Fish will embrace this anniversary, commencing the Commissioner's Banquet in January and events throughout the year. Also, the Alliance members met with Lottery Director Gregory Edgar, and he said the lottery has had marketing money available in their budget in the new fiscal year to do an event for the anniversary of the Heritage Fund. We are hoping that state parks will use this milestone to celebrate the reinstatement of the State Parks Heritage Fund. Also, the Alliance would like to host a joint meeting, working group session with the State Parks Board and Game and Fish Commission sometime in 2020 to design and develop a vision for the Heritage Fund's next 30 years. This is an invitation. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Janice. Would you mind, I know I can't talk other than that invitation, can you send it or email it to Bob so that it's on the record then for that? I think that'd be great idea. Thank you.
And Chairman, just to update the board, we did reach out to the lottery director to talk about how we can participate in that. Heritage Fund has been tremendous to state parks prior to losing it. So we're definitely going to be involved in that process. And so he didn't mention the marketing dollars, so that makes me even more excited. But yes, we absolutely should and will be involved in that.
And we can use that as a future agenda.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Chairman, may I just add that we are going to work in 2020 in the future to get the State Parks Heritage Fund fully funded by 2029. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, you see anything else on the call to public? This was the only one from Janice. Upcoming meetings coming up. I know that we have this desire to have meetings out of Maricopa County and or a retreat type format. Maybe the one on the 16th could be a first step towards that end, and certainly leave October as that opportunity. Nothing else is on it. We have a motion to go into executive session. If a board member would please be able to read that and remove that.
Yes. I move to meet an executive session in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A3 and 4 for the purpose of discussing or consulting with legal counsel for legal advice and considering its position and instructing its legal counsel regarding legal representation and strategy recommendations in the matter of Render v. Allen, case number 2019000068.
A motion is on the floor. Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Here, no other conversation. I'll roll call vote, please.
I think, right?
It's okay, we don't
Go
have
into executive session.
Aye.
John Sefton,
to. Aye.
Sean Moore,
Aye.
Terry Palmer,
All right, motion carries. And
Is there a number for Terry?
yes, they're gonna, Terry, you know, do you have a number to call in on?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. And for the audience, after the executive session, we will adjourn the meeting, so just to let you know. The meeting is readjourned, or is reconvened. To take up a motion, would one of the board members please entertain the motion?
Let's see if we can frame this one correctly. So I move to direct the Attorney General's office to proceed as discussed in executive session.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is on the floor and seconded for the AG's office to proceed with the executive session discussion just previously held. Any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Can you repeat your motion, please?
Maybe.
Maybe. I move to direct the Attorney General's office to proceed as discussed in executive session just previously.
And it was seconded by Board Member Orm. Roll call vote on the motion.
Dale Larson.
Aye.
John Sefton.
Aye.
Lisa Atkins. Debbie Johnson. Orm Lewis Jr. Sean Orm.
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
So the motion passes 4-0. That should do it. At this point, I call the meeting adjourned.
Excellent.
I'm keeping mine because it's